Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are taking a really fascinating detour into the world of fintech.
But we're looking pretty far from Silicon Valley.
Exactly. We are diving deep into a company that built this incredible success story, not despite an economic crisis, but, directly because of one.
We're talking about EcoCash.
EcoCash, the mobile money platform from Econet Wireless in Zimbabwe. And this is a story about a digital product that literally became the financial scaffolding for an entire collapsing economy.
That framing is, I think, essential. Our mission today is to really understand not just the mechanics of mobile money, but the sheer necessity that drove its adoption.
Right.
We need to analyze how this single digital platform under the leadership of Strive Mazia managed to transform finance through just incredible innovation, community trust, and, well, sheer resilience when every other formal institution was failing.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
And we absolutely have to start with the economic environment, because if you don't grasp the extreme volatility, I mean, the story of EcoCash just makes no sense.
It really doesn't.
Zimbabwe's situation wasn't just a recession. It was a complete economic breakdown.
It was an environment of profound institutional failure. We need to go back to around 2008. Zimbabwe suffered one of the most severe, just mind-bending episodes of hyperinflation in modern history. The official estimate for inflation. It peaked at figures in the billions and trillions %.
Billions and trillions. I mean, it's a number that's hard to even wrap your head around.
It defies comprehension, and it completely destroys the trust that underpins any currency.
And to put that in human terms for you, the sources we looked at describe a situation where if you got paid on a Monday, the money in your wallet was almost worthless by Friday.
Yeah.
People weren't worried about saving, they were worried about spending the money fast enough before it just evaporated.
Precisely. And this environment led to the total paralysis of traditional banking. First, physical cash became impossible to move.
You're talking about wheelbarrows of cash.
Literally. People carrying bags, even wheelbarrows full of paper, just to buy groceries. And second, the banks themselves were forced to close or severely limit their services. They just became unreliable.
So the whole infrastructure of commerce just failed.
It failed. People had no secure, stable, or predictable way to conduct transactions.
So when a system fails that fundamentally, how does any kind of commerce even continue?
Well, that's where Econet Wireless enters the picture. They were already the country's largest mobile operator.
And they saw an opening.
They recognized that even though paper money was dead, people still had phones, and they still had value they needed to exchange. They saw that the mobile phone was maybe the only stable piece of infrastructure left standing.
So like M-Pesa in Kenya, was that the model they were looking at?
That was definitely an inspiration. They saw how M-Pesa proved that mobile phones could work as these scalable, low-cost channels for financial transfers. But, and this is the key difference, the scale of the challenge for EcoCash was infinitely greater.
How so?
They weren't just serving the unbanked. They were serving a population whose entire currency was actively disintegrating right underneath their feet.
That's a critical distinction. They didn't just need a service, they needed like an anchor in the storm.
Exactly, an anchor.
But building a financial platform in that kind of chaos? I mean, that sounds like a massive gamble. How did the founder, Strive Mazia, make sure this wasn't just a market opportunity, but a real solution for a community in need?
It really came down to his philosophy. The business had to solve urgent societal problems. So EcoCash was designed with two immediate critical goals.
Okay.
First, enable reliable remittances from the diaspora, which was a lifeline. And second, provide a secure, cashless way for the huge informal economy to operate. They focused on pure utility over complexity.
So what was the technical choice that let them reach that huge underserved market? Because you can't build a financial system in rural Zimbabwe if it relies on expensive smartphones and, reliable 4G data.
And that's where the genius of it lies. They didn't rely on apps. They built the whole backbone using USSD.
USSD, unstructured supplementary service data.
Right. It's that simple text-based technology that lets you use a basic feature phone, the $10 Nokia, to send simple commands and get instant responses.
So the barrier to entry was practically zero.
Practically zero. It instantly extended financial services to every corner of the country that had even a basic mobile signal.
Okay, so USSD solves accessibility. But what about liquidity? I mean, even if you can send a text that says you have money, you still need to get physical cash out sometimes. How did they solve that cash scarcity problem?
This was maybe their greatest strategic move. the hyper-localized agent network.
Wow.
EcoNet didn't try to rely on bank branches. They invested heavily in training and commissioning tens of thousands of EcoCash agents.
And who were these agents?
Small shop owners, local vendors, entrepreneurs, people in villages, market centers, rural outposts. They became the local ATM.
I see. So they managed the physical flow.
Exactly. When you wanted to cash out, you'd go to a trusted local agent who held enough physical currency, which was often US dollars at the time, to give you cash in exchange for the digital value you transferred to them.
So it completely circumvented the failed centralized banking system.
Entirely. It made liquidity decentralized and available where people actually lived and worked.
And that infrastructure, combined with a desperate need, well, that must have led to some explosive growth after the 2011 launch.
Explosive is an understatement. Within the first, year and a half, they had nearly 2 million active users.
Wow.
But the real peak came within 5 years. They topped 6 million regular users.
6 million in a country of only 14 million people.
Yeah. That's virtually every working adult in the country connected to this single platform.
And the dominance numbers are just staggering. At its peak, EcoCash wasn't just a big player. It was the financial system. It was handling over 80% of all financial transactions in the entire economy.
80%. It grew larger in terms of volume than every traditional bank combined.
That's incredible. And it became essential for, daily survival. You're talking paying school fees, buying electricity tokens.
Settling bills, making sure small vendors could get paid securely. They basically built a parallel economy that was way more efficient and reliable than the formal one.
But the core ingredient in all of this, as you mentioned earlier, had to be trust. How do you technically build that much faith when the economy around you is proving that nothing is trustworthy?
It was earned through sheer operational reliability. I mean, when the banks were shutting their doors, EcoNet's network stayed up.
It just worked.
It just worked. When government policy was changing daily, EcoCash worked the same way every single day. The public chose the known, reliable private brand over the failing, unpredictable state-backed institutions.
And the agent network must have helped, having a human face.
A huge part of it. It provided a human interface to the digital money, which fostered that community trust.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting.
It does.
Because when a private company takes over 80% of a nation's financial commerce, that is going to create immediate, intense resistance from the old power structures.
Absolutely. The pushback was inevitable, and it was severe. On one side, you had the traditional banks,
who were seeing their entire business model just evaporate.
Rendered obsolete. They argued that EcoCash was operating outside the rules and that it was a systemic threat because it held this massive amount of liquidity, the float outside the formal banking system.
And then on the other side, you had the regulators.
Yeah.
The central bank.
And they felt they were losing control. Control over monetary policy, over liquidity, which, given the history of hyperinflation, was a very deep-seated fear for them.
To be fair, their concerns weren't totally unfounded from a regulatory perspective.
No, not entirely. The central bank saw this massive shadow economy developing that was, unobservable and untaxable in many ways, and they responded with some pretty heavy-handed interventions.
So let's talk about those. What were some of the specific actions the government took?
The primary methods were all about restricting the flow of money. Regulators mandated these frequent and often dramatic reductions in transaction limits, just trying to cap the platform's power.
Right.
They targeted the cash-in and cash-out facilities, which was really the platform's Achilles heel. They tried to force it to be purely digital. They even froze certain accounts and put new restrictions on the agent network itself.
And what happened when the regulators tried to, turn off the tap?
The entire country felt a shockwave. The sources vividly illustrate this. When the central bank temporarily shut down some of these critical services, the entire national economy slowed down.
Wow. So it wasn't a warning. It was concrete proof.
It was proof that EcoCash wasn't just a payment option anymore. It had become the country's circulatory system. The platform had sort of inadvertently become too big to fail.
And yet, despite all the restrictions and this constant fight for autonomy, EcoCash didn't collapse. They just kept innovating around the obstacles.
They adopted the strategy of persistent adaptation. So when cash out became restricted, they pushed hard on growing their merchant ecosystem.
Made the digital money more spendable.
Exactly. They integrated with payroll systems, utility companies, over 50,000 service points. They basically forced a full digitalization of transactions, often just out of necessity.
They also had to navigate the currency chaos. For you listening, EcoCash was dealing with the shift from the Zim dollar to the US dollar, then bond notes,
Right, a proxy currency.
and then various other forms of electronic money. That level of volatility should have killed any stable financial system.
It should have, and that's the technical marvel. These bond notes and electronic currencies were constantly fluctuating in value against the US dollar, creating these complex parallel markets.
A nightmare to track.
But EcoCash remained the most dependable vehicle for holding and transferring any form of value the state declared official. They adapted their back-end systems to track all the different valuations instantly and reliably. It offered consistency in the face of, well, currency insanity.
That remarkable consistency, it leads us right to the platform's biggest legacy, financial inclusion.
This is the ultimate impact, I think. It transcends the crisis. EcoCash didn't just survive, it fundamentally restructured who had access to finance.
And there's a key statistic here.
There is. Over 70% of adult Zimbabweans entered the formal financial system for the very first time through this one mobile platform.
70%. So we're talking about massive economic empowerment for people who were completely ignored by traditional banks.
Exactly. Smallholder farmers could finally get paid securely. Women running market stalls could protect their day's earnings digitally instead of carrying cash.
And remittances, too.
Families could get reliable remittances from abroad, which was often their primary income, and they could store that value securely during economic shocks. EcoCash wasn't just about transactions, it was an economic safety net.
It really stands as this powerful symbol of African innovation. We often look elsewhere for fintech revolutions, but EcoCash proved that the most groundbreaking solutions can emerge not from luxury, but from sheer necessity.
It shows that technology can thrive and even govern when the underlying economy is struggling. I think the greatest lesson here is that really impactful innovation is born from pressure.
Right. It succeeded because the state failed.
Precisely. The failure of the state financial system forced them to be hyper-focused on solving the most urgent existential problems for their users. They earned trust by performing during the crisis, and that trust became something that regulators or competitors just couldn't completely dismantle.
So what does this all mean?
It means that the success of digital finance, especially in emerging markets, isn't just guaranteed by good software. It's fundamentally reliant on a deep understanding of local needs in a crisis, the ability to build and sustain public trust, and, the technical resilience to withstand aggressive regulatory and monetary challenges.
So purpose and adaptation are more powerful than just capital.
In this context, absolutely. Yeah. Far more powerful.
And as you look at the immense pressure EcoCash faced, going from this necessary innovation to being seen as a systemic threat because it handled 80% of all transactions, it raises a critical question for you to consider. If a digital finance platform becomes essential to a nation's survival during a crisis, where does responsibility lie when that crisis subsides? How do nations balance the necessity of that resilient private innovation with the regulatory oversight needed to ensure long-term stability, especially when the financial backbone is a single non-bank private company? Think about that tension between life-saving necessity and the desire for control.